дуже професійно.
It's November 8th, Ukraine Media Center Confirm starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Chaparenko, and with the Brain Hub, the main country's discussion platform, we will present a new report, Business and Startups, Joint Steps Towards the Reconstruction of Ukraine. We will find out about the way Ukrainian startups can join the reconstruction of Ukraine, how can they assist this project, what are the urgent needs of the regions, and how to unite the experience and expertise of the investment projects and startups to make sure the reconstruction of Ukraine is going on in a quick and efficient manner. So let me introduce our guests. Joining us today are Lukasz Wawak, manager of the Polish-Ukrainian Startup Bridge, Pavlo Kartashov, director of, Roman Nikitov, co-head of ICU Ventures, and Katarina Hrechka, CEO of Technosystem. Mr. Lukasz, first of all, I would like to ask you, can you please tell us how did you come up with the idea of this research, and what are the results of this research? What have you seen there? Well, good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me tell you about our organization. Everybody was aware of us and of the partners that we have here. So I represent Polish-Ukrainian Startup Bridge. It's a project that is organized by the Foundation of Cooperation, a Polish foundation, and we cooperate with the Ministry of Foundations and Regional Policy of Poland, and all of our programs are funded by Polish Aid Program from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland. I apologize. So as you may see, I'm not Ukrainian, but I will try to speak in Ukrainian because we are in Ukraine now. Well, if you see or hear me saying something that is not quite easy to comprehend, let me explain it in English or otherwise. So again, back to our organization. I will tell you a little bit more about the report, but let me proceed to our partners. Good morning. I'm the executive director of Ecosystem. Civil organization is the organization that unites different stakeholders about Ukrainian products. We are proud to have such partners as Polish-Ukrainian Startup Bridge because international representation of Ukraine as an investment direction is extremely important, as well as support of the startups inside of the country. I want to thank all of the partners for participation, and I think this report will be very useful for all of the stakeholders. Good morning all. My name is Karina. I'm the head of the ecosystem in the Ukrainian Foundation of Startups. It's the state fund that invested in more than 400 startups within the years of its history. So our pipeline includes more than 6,000 applications from Ukrainian startups, and the amount of funding is almost $8.7 million. And according to the statistics, startups raise 6 times more per one invested dollar. So in coordination with Warsaw Stock Exchange and Polish-Ukrainian Startup Bridge, it's not the first iteration. We have this opportunity to get the section across the ecosystem. We get the direct response from startups, and we clearly understand the sentiment of the businesses, the innovators, and we get the understanding what is the vector of this movement, which way it's moving, what are the tendencies, and what they are inclined to. So this report allowed us to clearly understand what other thoughts the business managers have, what are the thoughts of the innovators, so that those businesses can develop in Ukraine. I think that we will touch upon these topics in more detail a little bit later. Thank you. Good morning. It's my pleasure to see everyone here. My name is Roman Nikitov and I represent ICU Ventures. It's a venture fund of ICU Group, and we focus on two areas. We invest in Ukrainian startups that build global businesses, and also we invest in the developing markets, specifically in fintech. Within these almost 5 years that we keep investing in these areas, we have more than 30 companies in our portfolio, and most of them have Ukrainian roots. In coordination with Polish-Ukrainian Startup Bridge, we implemented a number of projects within the last 2 years. We appreciate the efforts of our colleagues, what they're doing within these last maybe even 3 years. So they support Ukrainian startups that both in Ukraine and Poland we were able to see and to take part in the support of the program itself, of the program of Polish-Ukrainian Startup Bridge. Last year, when there was a demo day of Ukrainian startups in Warsaw Stock Exchange, and we hope to be involved in this event this year as well. It's about to happen on the 30th of November in Warsaw Stock Exchange. Thank you very much for the intro. So let's proceed to the report. Mr. Lukasz, can you please tell us about the results? How is the synergy of startups and business is expressing itself now? So it's our third report. Why do we make it? First, from the beginning, when we just came up with this project, when we've just established it, our mission was to help Ukrainian startups and technology companies to find out more about the way Polish market operates, how they can meet their clients there, how they can enter that market, and we were also helping, and we keep helping to meet our ecosystem, Polish venture foundations. So we found out that first we need to build a positive image of Ukraine as a country that has its original innovations, and to support them to be understood in Poland and in Ukraine, that it's useful to be in Ukraine, to be a part of this ecosystem. And the best form of communication is always some professional report. So in coordination with the partners, we started with Warsaw Stock Exchange as a Polish institution and Ukrainian Startup Fund. We co-organized this report. So we've invited our Ukrainian and Polish partners like ecosystem and ICS, so that they from their perspective can say how did they like the results, what would be their advice, what could we do to Ukrainian ecosystem to make it function better. So I think that today we're opening a Polish-Ukrainian or maybe Ukrainian international discussion about how we should build the Ukrainian startup ecosystem. So that's number one. So what are the results of our... Oh, it works? Right in front of you. So first, the results of the research are very positive. This is my personal opinion. But in short, Ukrainian startups, they have their solutions, they know how to implement them, they know how to develop them, they have faith in victory. First of all, they have faith in future, and they are confident they can be a part of the reconstruction. So that seems a little bit too good. And we on our end, we think how we can organize the fund and the investments to make sure that the startups can cooperate with each other more efficiently. So as you can see, dear ladies and gentlemen, 90% of startups see high growth potential in the future. They see their potential as very positive. They believe that future will be bright. So 31% of startups were able to find their investors, both in Poland and in Europe now, and of course in Ukraine it's quite difficult to get funding. So me as a person from ecosystem, I think that if 1/3 of the startups were able to find investors, that's a huge success. That's a huge success that we can even work on to make it even better. Yet another thing, and here we would like to express a gratitude and express to Ukrainian Startup Fund, because 46% of the startups stated that ecosystem works. First of all, that they estimate it as average, but in view of the fact that country is waging a war, that the country is fighting the enemy, that all of the funding is aimed and channeled at the victory, I think it's an incredible result from my point of view. Me as a Polish, I cannot even say how we in our ecosystem that has funds, that has expertise, I don't know how we would react. How would we be able to support the startups? So again, from the point of view of the Polish, I'm saying that we respect Ukrainian ecosystem, Ukrainian institutions a lot, those who work for those results and those startups that we work with every day. And a little bit more in short about where the startups are. Almost all of the territory of the country is included in the results of the report. The majority of the startups are originating from Kiev. It's a normal situation. Again, 15% of the startups are currently outside Ukraine, and the majority of them, I mean 56%, are located in Poland. And that's again a very good result that we enjoy, and because we think that Ukrainian startups pick Poland because first of all, it's the country with a similar mentality. Second, it's very close. Ecosystem is not. I mean, it is a little bit developed, but not too much. There is not a lot of competition compared to, for example, Germany. And again, you can understand very quickly how Poland works. You can learn Polish language in the same way that I was able to master Ukrainian to a certain extent. So I understand that just like Polish ecosystem, we will aspire in the direction of cooperation with Ukrainian partners, Ukrainian startups, so that they can make use of something that is offered by our ecosystem. There's a lot of graphs here. We are about to disseminate this presentation that is attached to the report. So what I would like to focus on is one important thing. Well, first question is whether the startups that are currently abroad, are they coming back to Poland? The majority thinks that they will stay there. Yet another question is, you see, I don't see it quite well, but 23%, I think 23% of the startups or 18% of the startups stated that they're not coming back to Ukraine after the victory, and 35% are still hesitated. So what we would like to say to those startups, we need to talk to them, we need to support them, and we need to invite them back to Ukraine so they return. From the Polish perspective, it's very important to have Ukraine have its innovations elite involved in this development, because as the Polish we think that having a stable partner, having a partner who has opportunity to develop faster, that will be the most important thing that we can achieve in the future, because it's a factor that will make sure that the country develops intensely and in the right direction. I don't want to monopolize all of the time of the press conference. I think I've said enough, and let me give the floor to my colleagues. Thank you very much, Mr. Lukasz. Mr. Karina, now that you've taken the microphone, let me ask you this question. Based on your experience, based on your vision, how can Ukrainian startups join their transformation, the reconstruction of Ukraine? And most important, in what area it can happen? Where are they the most important? Well, thank you very much, Svetlana, for your question. I would like to get back to what Lukasz has said. We started this 3 years ago, and the idea was not to just draw everyone's attention and tell about some positive results, but just pay attention. Ukraine has an incredible innovations potential. We have something to show to the world, and all those unicorns that we see, if I'm not mistaken, Airslay and Unstoppable Domains, who exceeded this evaluation of 1 billion during the war, it's a good indicator of the fact that the system is developing, maybe due to the reasons that we all understand, not so they don't develop so fast as we would like to imagine. Yes, the war influenced everybody, and we have to take it into account. Now the startups are only growing in Ukraine, and from our perspective we see they need support, and as a government foundation with the beginning of the full-scale invasion, well, the focus of the state shifted a little bit. We launched the program of support of the projects of double purpose, dual use, and at that very moment when we founded it, after the 3 months of the beginning of the full-scale invasion, there were such areas as healthcare, cybersecurity, defense, because we think that those projects are critical in addition to those that can expedite our victory and reconstruction of Ukraine. And it's important to remember that everybody pays their contribution, employing people here, paying the taxes, developing the businesses here, building a successful company here, and in case you raise investments, it's the positive image of the country. And an important statement that Katerina, I think, will support, and that startups travel to international delegations, international exhibitions, invest in us not because we're from Ukraine, but because our product is good. And yes, since we're from Ukraine and we can build business, develop it, maintain it without electricity during missile attacks, during air raid alerts, having problems with internets, breakdowns, complications, logistic disruptions, depending on the area of activity of the country. Well, you know, those people are capable of anything. You're not going to find any single country that fortunately or unfortunately would be facing complications like these. But stress resilience, their ability to maintain businesses in conditions like that, maintain the team, paying salaries, you know, keeping the project together without letting it fall apart, you know, that says something. A lot of teams, they change the vector, the area of activity. But talking about statistics provided by Forbes a couple of months ago, since the beginning of the year, we've only had 3 startups shut down. So it's about 1 to 2%, which says that the companies mostly continue. And what Lukasz has said, and the report corroborates, that the majority of the companies, even no matter they cannot be directly integrated into reconstruction, they see their future here. They are ready to assist by donations, taxes, anything else. So that area that allows them within the activity of their company, yeah, we understand not everybody makes drones in the garage. Not everybody can offer some innovation materials that can help us reconstruct new buildings, I don't know, through 3D printers, new technologies. But the war touched everyone, and it ceased to be a problem of one person, one region. Is the problem of the country, is the problem of a global level. And now we see the engagement of all of the citizens, all the economic actors, so to say. So seeing their positive sentiment, their vision of victory, their readiness to invest efforts to expedite, first of all, victory, then reconstruction, reintegrate in the society, and allow themselves and their teams to demonstrate the technological and innovations potential, to prove that Ukraine is not a third world country, it's not a part of Russian Federation. It's a country that deserves their place at this table, and we have something to show off. And we want to thank all of our partners who get engaged in such important projects, all the startups of the companies who got involved in this research, because we hear their voices, we hear all those indifferent people who take part in those researches, projects, different events, who tell about Ukraine, who tell what we have, maybe what we need, raising investments, telling about the investment potential of our country, because some might say it's risky to invest in Ukraine, but not investing in Ukraine is even riskier. So it's a merit of all of our country, and I think the way of our reconstruction will be joint. And hearing the voices of such people by my side, I think that it will be a successful way. Ms. Katrina, your organization continues helping startups enter international markets. So, in your opinion, what are the gaps that still impede the startups entering the international markets, finding investors, and what can we do to fill those gaps? Thank you for your question. Let me tell you a little bit about our role in this report, because, for example, we were talking a lot about startups, but the focus of this report is in demonstration of coordination between the institution and startups. So ecosystem is the institution, and we're building this institution that facilitates and helps to find the dialogue between the SMEs and the government, because we know that, for example, Poland and their SMEs and their export-import balance is something that put Poland on a new level in terms of economy. So our goal is to increase the fraction of IT in GDP of Ukraine within 5 to 7 years. We understand that Ukraine was a service-oriented country. We provide very high-level services to our partners abroad, but now Ukrainian products may be thanks to the war, sometimes entered a new level of creativeness, level of challenges, just like Karina said. And our task is to make sure that Ukrainians have the sentiment of entrepreneurship, so that they get support starting from the country and ending with the state, so that Ukrainians get support from such institutions as ours, to make sure they study financial literacy, English language, study business models, financial models, and to take pride in being Ukrainian. And again, talking about talent pool migration policy of the state, it's an important question. Well, everybody wants Ukrainians now, but we want Ukrainians to be incorporated in Ukraine and then scale up into the new markets in other countries. For example, this is why, in coordination with international donors, we've organized 4 delegations to Washington, London, Toronto, and San Francisco, where we brought delegations from Ukrainian startups and government representatives. And the commitments for the next 5 years under these startups amount to $20 million. Probably not such a huge amount, but it's something. And as we, for example, go there, we see those gaps. Sometimes people don't know how to present their ideas, how to present themselves. Some may even have no faith in their success. So this international support, coordination with the stakeholders, government, businesses, institutions who help establish such coordination, and obviously the conditions of creating business. For example, it's easy to establish a startup in the state of Delaware, but establishing business in Ukraine, for example, in defense tech, we know how Ukrainians deal with it, and we understand if we don't help them now, without victory, it all makes no sense. This is why we've created such a startup pack now. We support startups in their development, providing them with a package of solutions in cloud services, legal tools, marketing tools, CRM systems, something that they're missing within the first 2 years, because before they make an MVP, before they raise first investments, it's like a child you have to raise. So our organization helps them, and depending on the area of activity of the startup, we try to bring together startup and investor. Now we have product line and venture line put together. My colleagues may tell you a little bit more about venture. So this line of coordination with the government and international coordination, international cooperation. So if you cannot feed 100, feed at least one. If you cannot raise 100 startups, raise at least 5, or raise 1 unicorn. So now we are in dialogues with the representatives of our government, other institutions. We understand strategic verticals. If we have more time, I will tell you a little bit more about that a little bit later. So we have to all join our forces to make sure that Ukrainian unicorns don't come in the numbers like 8, but 38. We have to understand what we have to do as a community, as a country, to make it happen, and to make it happen better in Ukrainian jurisdiction. Well, I apologize, let me add a couple of words about Ukrainian unicorns. I would like to inform you that in Poland we have 2 unicorns. Ukrainians have 8. Well, depending on the way of calculation, but let's say 8. Why such a difference? Why the Polish cannot become as global as Ukrainians? First of all, our internal market is large, but comparing to Ukrainian, so our startups are focused at internal market, and Ukrainians, as the startup finders, they have to think about the global client from the very beginning, and this is the classic way of the startup. You don't have a product, you don't have a solution, but your client is already waiting for you, not waiting for you in Kharkiv or Lviv. They wait for you in Berlin, in New York, and they have money. The only thing you have to do is to develop your product and to present it, to sell it. So every time I meet our Polish startups, my advice to them is do it in the way that Ukrainians do, and you will be successful. Thank you very much. Ms. Katerina, you've just mentioned that there are negotiations going on with the government about the support of the startups. So is the government interested in such a support? From the very beginning, our organization received a lot of support from the Ministry of Digital Transformation. We have a memorandum with them that we take pride in. So we've started with the platform of Ukrainian support over user. We've identified the information, we've gathered the information, and now this ecosystem is going to a new level. Everybody might have seen about the strategy of digitalization and digital development of Ukraine, and we understand that it's going through a number of iterations now, but it all goes on in consultations with the businesses, with the institutions, and previously there were verticals identified of strategic importance because technologies now penetrate all the sectors of economy and technology. We see a lot of and defense technologies. Well, we may read a lot of interesting news even from the Ministry of Digitalization, but we focused from the point of view of our institution and point of view of coordination with the related ministries. We're focused on HR tech, defense tech, because it's all about talent pool. And for the next year, we've planned and started working for energy clean tech, agri-tech, and I hope we will have enough capacity for GovTech with AI. So I think that the proper use of technologies, targeted use of technologies, is something that will allow Ukraine to become a technology hub, a hub that can ensure the food security, improve the operation of the logistic corridors in coordination with such partners as Poland, to use the technologies in the right way and to raise international funds both from institutional and private investors in development of the region, not only Ukraine but the region at large. And as a representative of a government institution in Ukraine, let me add something. In the beginning of December, it will be our birthday, so the story is like this. From the very beginning, the government for a long time takes care of the startups in Ukraine, and creation of the Ukrainian Startups Fund, just like a startup inside of the country. No one expected the level that we were about to achieve. Very little were expecting 400 startups to be funded and 4,000 to be in the pipeline. So talking about the funded, it's about 400 of them. So we don't only focus on grants. It's not only about extending funds and saying like do what you want. It's about creation of ecosystem, because as we talk about the Ukrainian Startup Fund, we are the entry point for everybody, for organizations, venture funds, accelerators, incubators, startups, and so on and so forth, including European institutions, quite serious institutions, because Ukrainian Startups Fund is one of the little number of partners of European Institute of Innovations, and we even cooperate with European Commission. It's a very important wave of integration into European system of innovations and support of Ukrainian innovators in entering foreign markets, something that's open for other countries, but something that used to be closed for us. So back to the topic of support of the startups, even during the martial law, something that we've started as a dual-use product support, something that grew into a defense cluster that funded defense tech dual use for more than $1 million, something that expedites our victory. So focusing on that, providing serious budgets for that area of innovations during the martial law, it all says that the government puts a stake on those teams, on those who are ready to spend their times, their ideas to contribute to the development of innovations products. So I think it's a complex story, and working under the guidance of the Ministry of Digital Transformation, witnessing the support of the state, all those delegations supported by the Ministry of Digital Transformation that Katerina mentioned, and with the support of other ministries who act as partners, I think it's all the expression of that credit of trust that we have from Ukrainian funders, that they see our readiness to work for the good, for the sake of our country. So it's a complex work that, in coordination with Ukrainian partners, ministries, and our foreign friends, our foreign institutions, venture funds, investors, that we do together. But I think that Ukraine and all the digital vertical that is dealing with the startups, they do everything they can, even maybe not in the format of money, but in the format of capabilities, some serious intros. As I keep joking that Ukrainian startup funds, for them it's easier to break a wall jointly rather than to knock on the door one by one. So that percentage that Lukasz mentioned today, they are just a confirmation of the efficiency of our work. So talking about breaking those walls jointly, currently we have more than 30 food companies in our community. By the end of the year it will be more than 50 of them, and we will become the biggest food community in Ukraine. So we do it to make sure that the voice of ours is heard by the government, but we do it for the sake of partnership rather than competition, because the request should originate from the businesses, not from the government. Well, and talking about the investments, Mr. Mann, can you tell us about the support of the startups in the ecosystem, and in your opinion, how can the unification of Polish and Ukrainian startup system help in the post-war reconstruction of Ukraine? Thank you very much. I would like to emphasize a number of important things, from the perspective of investor. Until the year 2017 or 18, we were very intensely involved in something that seemed to us as a building of an ecosystem. Back then there was no such an active participation of the government, of the state. It emerged a little bit later. So we've come up with the question, what are we supposed to do? And probably knock from the downside, so to say, how can we build this system using the effort of community investors? It's the 4th year in a row that I'm a member of Supervisory Council of Ukraine's venture organization or association, so I'm aware of all of the problems. And within the last couple of years, before the war and now, specifically now, it's very difficult, but still the government support is still there to the extent possible. And at that moment, as we've started building this ecosystem, we had a very simple statement. So there is creative youth, there are startups, there are food companies that grow from Ukraine, and they build global businesses. So we were calling it an Israeli model, and maybe someday someone will call it a Ukrainian model. It's the model of survival. A Ukrainian startup cannot aim, as Lukasz mentioned, at building a unicorn only in Ukrainian level, at Ukrainian market. So from the very first day, the Ukrainian startup builds a global sales network that brings it to the global level right away. It's a huge difference in the vision, like Lukasz mentioned, between Poland and Ukraine. So the statement was simple. Okay, the startup grows to a certain level, and then as we call it, triple F, among friends, family, and fools, they may find maybe 100, maybe $200,000. There is some MVP, but there is a gap when they still don't have enough funding to go to San Francisco to an American investor. But to fill that gap where the startup is trying to raise investments up to $1 million in Ukrainian ecosystem, there are no such things happening. So as they come to San Francisco, the first question they're asked, where is your local investor? But local investor never existed. So this is where we've seen our role there. So we've started investing in late seed round A from $500,000 to $1 million investments. And it started developing, it started evolving. We've seen the government enter in the later stages and in earlier stages too, helping the companies grow. And today we're at the stage where I want to thank Lukasz and his team and everybody involved for doing what they do, for coming to Ukraine, for being in Poland and trying to support Ukrainian startups from there, because they have the accelerator program. They educate 15 Ukrainian startups a year. Those who ended up outside Ukraine, frequently not all of them, but very frequently they do. They end up in Poland. They try to survive. They try to understand how to use the goods provided by the ecosystem, or how to make their way around the obstacles existing there. But in the end, they help our ecosystem to survive in immigration, talking in simple words. So that's one thing. And secondly, startups and businesses which were forced to find themselves somewhere abroad, or who resort to relocation for the sake of survival, or who resort to expansion, the war or this event, is the disruption. As an investor, I shouldn't be talking about the war, but rather about the disruption. And this war, it mixed up this war. So we have to learn to survive, and startups first of all, because we're talking about startups. So we have to survive, to learn to survive in other conditions, and all those conditions somehow, this disruption forced the people who were not thinking about expansion, about existence in different systems, about looking for other investors. So they stimulate people to look for other solutions. And I'm humbled by the fact that it's the second report during the martial law. First one was the statistics about the sentiment, the plans, the percentage of those who left. So in this report, and I'm seeing it for the first time, just like you do. So there is a statistics that proves that the startups learn to live in that ecosystem, and that with the help of such programs as Polish-Ukrainian Startup Bridge, we take the best and they use that ecosystem, remaining Ukrainian, in a sense that from the very first day we know that the shortcomings of our system in general resulted in registration of startups in the state of Delaware, just like you've mentioned from the very beginning. And whether to call it Ukrainian or not, we identified it for ourselves in the following way. If a company pays taxes in Ukraine, maybe it's not a founder. Maybe founder lives somewhere else in San Francisco, but there is a team which develops something, pays taxes, and people live in Ukraine, so it's a Ukrainian company. For us, it was a definition like that. And today these two walls between Poland and Ukraine are of extreme importance, in my opinion, should I end here? Well, they are incredibly important because apart from cultural, historic and other aspects, there are also very practical aspects, such as the fact that during a long period there was no experience of cooperation between Ukrainian and Polish businessmen. We were developing in different worlds. There was it's not a figure of speech. There was a technically built border between us, and the experience of the last 30 years of both Polish and Ukrainian businessmen, both young and old, it's very different. And when I see how the startups find themselves in Poland now, well, it's not so easy. It's maybe even more difficult to reach out to the client over there rather than to reach out to an American client due to a number of cultural differences. But when I see the way they try to survive, and when I see cooperation between Ukrainian and Polish businessmen, and we have an experience with Lukasz of the joint support of a very good thing that we probably cannot talk about here, but it's a joint Ukrainian-Polish product that makes a huge deal for the victory, and it's an intense experience accumulated in this cooperation of young people, but Polish and Ukrainian people, and it's one of the foundations of the development of the ecosystem. You know, we say here is Polish, here is Ukrainian, but we are very complementary. We have something that is missing in Polish, and in Poland there is something that is missing in Ukraine. We have to learn to use the best practices, the best elements of every system. Thank you very much, Mr. Roman. Let's invite the journalist to join our conversation. Dear colleagues, do we have any questions on the floor? Olga Stukalo, Rubrika, good morning. Can you please tell us in a little bit more detail about the startups who were part of this report? Yes, the report covered 107 startups. It's not a huge number, however, from the point of view of the fact that it's a very narrow area of economy, we can say that it's a representative group. The majority of startups are small companies, but 28% of the companies which fill the questionnaires are the startups that have 10 or more than 10 employees. To cover it in better detail, well, that's only the information from the report. I've mentioned that they feel positive now. It's a significant change compared to the previous report. In the previous report, only 20% were feeling useful or normal, and the war had no significant influence on their situation. So the majority of them either have the solutions that can help rebuild Ukraine after the victory, but also we have to pay attention that we were joined by the startups that were interested in reconstruction. So basically we cannot say that all of the startups have some solutions that the government, the state can use for recovery, but all of them who were answering our questions they were asked that question: do you think about the future? Would you like to create a solution that would help Ukraine? So 98% of the respondents, of those who were filling the questionnaires, they said, yes, we think about the future solutions. So talking about where they are and where they want to be, I've mentioned it. That's a problem. We have to discuss it. We have to find the solutions how to make them pay attention to the state. And talking about the fundraising success, we've already covered that. And again, here's a very important question from the startups. It's something that they need investments for. They need investments from the state, from the private funds. That's in short. If you want to ask about more detail, I can tell you about that. Do we have any more questions on the floor? Well, Mr. Lukash, who and how is going to use this research? What is its purpose, and where can we find the full version of this report? Well, first of all, I would like to thank our partners who organized our agenda, who provided their information. So you can use this QR code to download our report. And the next steps that are going to happen. This is the first press conference about this report. It's supposed to have happened in Ukraine. We didn't plan it, but thanks to Ukraine Media Center, Ukraine Media Center, Ukraine Forum, we were able to do it. The next conference is going to happen in Warsaw. It will be for Polish media and international media based in Warsaw, and we will use the database of our journalists to make them aware of this report. Previous report was published in BBC materials in Great Britain. It was in Figaro. It was in Radio Televisione Italiana. The previous report was incredibly popular in Poland because well, it showed up in the most important newspapers such as Startup Ecosystem, Rzeczpospolita, and we hope that this report will be of interest too, and we will use the data from this report to develop more detailed advice for the ecosystem, not Ukrainian but Polish, so it's more open for Ukrainian startups, so that it prepares funding for them. We see ourselves as ambassadors of Ukrainian startups in Poland. Well, I think that those are the main details. Ms. Karina, is Ukrainian state going to use the details from this report? Let me tell you even more. All of the reports that we do with, for example, Polish-Ukrainian Startup Bridge, and a month before we presented a catalog, a report regarding 100 most prospective startups. So the focus of the government is on those reports because it's a textbook. As soon as your foreign partner asks, say, analyst asks, do you have startups? Do you have analytics? Do you have something to show, something to reference? So it's always a good statistics. I'll add a little bit optimism here. If I'm not mistaken, 2 months ago, there was a meeting in Israel where the CEO mentioned that Ukraine is in the 4th place in terms of development on the global ecosystem of startups. So the state keeps its focus on innovation, specifically during the war, because we've realized how dual-use technologies or defense tech solutions, how they can influence our security, our defense, and how they influence the world generally. So I would say that all those details are very useful always. This is why we always develop them in coordination with the partners, because it's a good representation of what's going on, what's happening. And as Roman and Lukasz have mentioned, there was a report during the new year. There was a section of what's going on. Now we see the vision of the founders that were surveyed. What are their plans, how they see their future in Ukraine, how they're going to enter international markets. It's a very good representation always, and thanks to reports like this, we understand what can be done to that, and we understand that we do everything we can in coordination with the partners to make sure that ecosystem is more comfortable for them, for international partners, in terms of investment in our startups, in innovation, in drawing attention to Ukraine, and thus developing the innovations potential of the country. Thank you very much. We want to thank our guests for support of Ukrainian startups for this interesting research. Mr. Lukasz, thank you for support on behalf of Poland, and thank you for speaking Ukrainian today. It's very pleasant to hear you speaking Ukrainian. I hope it was easy to understand. Well, it was extremely easy to understand. I would like to remind you that we were discussing startups and businesses within the framework of Brain Hub discussion platform, and Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum will continue at 12:30. We'll talk about the enemy attacks on Zaporizhia and their aftermath and the current situation in the region. Stay tuned.